Welcome to Theater Corner. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. Theater Corner is created as an ongoing effort to increase diverse interest and involvement in the theater scene. Today, we're broadcasting from the Festival Rehearsal Hall here at the Old Globe Theater in San Diego. This is the very same hall where the cast of Hamlet rehearsed for that production. We're going to sit down with the legendary actor, Michael Genet. So, silence your cell phones, folks. You're about to enter Theater Corner. And here we are with Michael Genet, the legendary Michael Genet.
Hey,
thank you very much for coming to Theater Corner.
Legendary Michael Taylor.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you coming here, and I know you're busy here in San Diego.
Thanks for inviting. No, man. Well, yeah, I'm busy here in San Diego, but enjoying San Diego as well.
Okay.
It is a beautiful, beautiful city.
All right. Yeah. Yes, it is indeed. And so the reason that you're here, you're performing at the Old Globe Theater in Hamlet.
Right.
And you're performing at the Old Globe until September 22nd.
Well, we're here right now, I think, through the 13th, and if we do well enough, maybe we'll get extended beyond that.
Okay,
yeah.
We'll cross our fingers on the extension.
Cross our fingers.
And this is an amazing production. You know, we got a Black Hamlet. Grantham Coleman is playing that, and you're playing the father, the ghost.
I play the ghost. I'm doing three roles. I play the ghost, I play the player king, and then I come back and I do the gravedigger. So I'm kind of exhausted by the time. if for no other reason other than the costume changes I have to make.
I was going to mention the costume that you're wearing, the one that lights up. I mean, is that pretty heavy or?
It's heavy. It is heavy. It's more cumbersome than heavy. Ironically enough, the Player King costume it weighs a ton.
Wow.
And you wouldn't think so, but this short vest with the balloon sleeves and this, because it's all made out of leather. It is so heavy. I mean, whoever wore those outfits back in that particular time period, they had back troubles. Man. I'm telling you, I got it on and I'm just sitting backstage and my back is hurting.
Wow.
It's so heavy, yeah. But the ghost costume is just an incredible design because it's made out of, I don't know if I'm giving too much away, but the under the armor, which is the armor itself, is made out of a fabric that's actually made out of plastic. But what runs through it are thousands and thousands of streams of fiber optics. And I've got like 8 different battery packs attached to me, and through the control booth, they light me up, and I look like I'm about to go into the space shuttle and go to the moon. You know?
So this is your second time at the Globe.
Yeah.
So what's this experience? What's it been like doing Hamlet?
Oh man, it's been a blast. I mean, you got a great theater first and foremost. I mean, this complex is second to none. Getting a chance to work with Barry Edelstein, the artistic director, who happens to be, for all intents and purposes, man, he's a genius with regards to Shakespeare and the classics. Working with a great group of people, both the equity members and the MBA students who are part of the program here, and the rest of the crew, the wardrobe. I mean, it's been a blessed experience, and you're doing it under the auspices of sunny, beautiful San Diego with the water to your left and the hillsides to your right. I mean, anybody comes here and has a complaint, you need to send them back home.
Right.
Yeah.
And so half the cast are Black actors.
Yeah. Yeah,
and so
because there were a whole lot of Black people in Denmark.
Well, I think it's great that Barry, he does a lot of what we sometimes refer to as colorblind casting or colorful casting in this case.
Yeah.
And so, what do you think about that?
Well, I'm of two schools with regards to non-traditional casting, especially when it comes to Shakespeare. First and foremost, I have to say I'm grateful to theaters and to directors and producers who give actors of color the opportunity to say these incredible words. Because let's face it, in the industry, there is this underlying current of no matter how good you are at Tennessee Williams or how good you are at August Wilson per se, they hold this invisible bar up to say, we withhold the title of greatness until you can prove that you can do the classics.
Okay.
So since that's the case, give me the opportunity and let me prove myself. That being said, I personally do not have a problem if you have an all-white cast of Shakespeare or something, because inherently it is not something that's necessarily germane to my ancestry. So I don't go around complaining, oh, there's an all-white cast of the Scottish play or an all-white cast of Much Ado About Nothing. I did Much Ado About Nothing. I did arguably, I think, and this is no joke, I did probably the finest production of Much Ado About Nothing that's ever been done in the United States of America. I was proud to do it with the great Derek Anson Jones, who brought us Wit off Broadway. And he did, half the cast was black and then the other half was white, and we just had a tremendous production. But if you don't go that route with regards to the classics, me personally, you're not gonna get any gripe, because I get it. I get it. I mean, I don't know that I would wanna see an integrated production of August Wilson, because it is inherent to,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but I'm glad for the opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you did an amazing job. I was sitting there in the audience, swollen with pride. I mean, I really appreciate what you
We
did.
make it do what it do. You know?
There you go.
And you get a chance to say those words, you better cherish it and honor it and come with your A game, because it will test whether or not you have the mettle to step up. And if you don't, it will expose you.
Wow.
You know.
And so you're an actor, but you're also a writer and producer.
I am a writer.
And I want to say congratulations. I'm sure you've heard congratulations over all these years for you wrote Talk to Me, which you won the NAACP Image Award for.
Right.
So
it sits on my shelf. I pass it every day.
And so tell us about that piece, because that's a special piece. Actually, you have a personal connection to that story.
Yeah, Talk to Me is essentially the story of my father, Dewey Hughes. My real name is Hughes. I don't have any pretensions. Genet was forced upon me by the Actors Union. But it's a story of my father, who was a radio producer at the time in Washington, D.C., went on to produce in TV too. But when he was a radio producer at a station called WOL, 1450 AM, his brother was in the Lorton State Penitentiary. And my grandmother was urging him, please go see your brother, please go see your brother. So he went down and saw his brother in prison. And when he got there, the word had spread that the radio man was coming. The radio man was coming. So when he got in, there was this, he walked into the prison, man, there was this incredible radio. Just music was just bumping. And he was like, he looked at the guard and said, man, y'all got some incredible radio down here. What station is that? And the guard said, oh no, that ain't no station. That's right here, that's Petey Greene. That's right here in the jail. And he said, whoa. So when he went out into the yard where they bring the prisoners out to see family members, you know, my father was looking down because he was trying to be inconspicuous, and you know, rows and rows of prisoners with their prison shoes went past him, and all of a sudden, this pair of brand new spanking Stacey Adams stood in front of him. And he looked up, and it was this prison outfit with these Stacey Adams, and it was Petey Greene standing in front of him. Petey Greene introduced himself, said, hey, I'm Petey Greene. I'm the radio man. I want you to put me on your radio station. And my father was trying to say, hey man, I can't do that. He said, no, and he was relentless. He wouldn't let it go. So finally, after Petey just kept battering him, he said, all right, look, when you get out, come see me. I'll see what I can do. My father turned to leave, and then he turned to Petey and said, oh, by the way, when do you get out? And Petey looked at him and said, 10 years. And so my father was like, oh my God. Well, 6 months later, Petey Greene shows up at WOL's door. Now what had happened was, there was this 400-foot water tower on the prison grounds. And it was the dead of winter, like February. It was like 12 below zero. And a prisoner had climbed up to the top of the water tower. Now this warden had never had a blemish on his record in the entire tenure of his duration there. And he and his guards were standing out for like 2-3 hours trying to get this prisoner down without an incident. And the prisoner wouldn't come down. So the prisoner started stomping around on the top of the water tower saying, I want Petey Greene, I want Petey Greene. So the warden was flustered, and he just said, all right, look, go get Petey Greene, bring him out here. So Petey came out, climbed up to the water tower. 15 minutes later, he and the prisoner safely crawled down to safety. The warden was so pleased and happy that Petey was able to have this moment resolved without incident, that the prison sentencing laws at that point in time were different, that he did something to get Petey's sentence commuted so he could have an early release. But what the warden didn't realize is that while it only took Petey 15 minutes into talking the prisoner down from the water tower, it had taken him 6 months into talking him to go up there in the first place. So that's a true story. Yeah. So when he got to WOL, he kept badgering my father for a job on air, and the owner, who was this elderly gentleman, white Jewish cat by the name of Mr. Sunderland, said, absolutely not. This guy's got a foul mouth. He's an ex-convict. I can't put him on the air. And so my father said, no, I can get you a job as a janitor, and Petey rejected that. And so Petey picketed by himself the station for the next 3 weeks with placards and things, but he wasn't picketing WOA, he was picketing my father. Dewey Hughes is this, Dewey Hughes can't do this to him. So it was embarrassing. So my father finally said, we gotta put him on. And Mr. Sunderland said, okay, you put him on, but you go on the air with him. And if he says one foul, profane word, you put your finger on that dump button and cut it off. And Petey went on the air with my father in the studio with him, and they instantaneously became the #1 radio show in Washington for the next 20 years.
Wow.
Dr. King was assassinated in April of 1968, and riots enveloped Washington, D.C. especially. I was a little kid, and I remember standing on my balcony in Southeast Washington looking out, and it was like if I had been Nero, all I needed was a fiddle because the city below me was burning. My father and Petey went on the air that night, and their broadcast with Petey on the microphone helped squash the riots. My father got on the phone, got James Brown on the line, and got James Brown to agree to come do a free concert in the middle of the streets in Georgetown the very next night. And he and Petey's broadcast helped squash the riots and saved, thousands and thousands of lives. And they also saved a food chain called Giant Food Chain from having its stores burned down. And the owner of Giant Food Chain was so pleased and happy and grateful for their efforts to save his stores that he put up the money to give them to produce their own local TV show in Washington, D.C., which was called Petey Greene's Washington. That show went on to be the #1 local TV show in the history of all Washington, D.C., and they won 4 Emmy Awards for that show alone. So that's kind of,
wow.
Yeah. And then my father went on about 15 years later, in 1980, he and his then wife, the great Kathy Hughes, who was the owner, chairman of the board of TV One and Radio One now, they bought WOL radio station, becoming the first black owners of a radio station in United States history.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's also where you hosted AM Quiet Storm.
Oh,
you got that part of that smooth history
when I graduated school, I was out here. I was at Cal Arts. I was finishing Cal Arts. I ended up getting my first acting job out of school doing the first black casting of Death of a Salesman up in Santa Maria, California. When that show ended, my father called and said, what are you doing? You still doing the show? I said, no, I just closed. He said, what else you got going? I said, well, right now I'm unemployed. He said, all right, get on the plane, you're coming back here, you're gonna learn the family business. I was like, okay. So when I got there, they had me doing reception work, they had me doing janitor work, had me doing copy editor work, I was cutting commercials in the studio, and then finally he put me on late night hosting of the midnight to 6 a.m. shift, which means I was broadcasting to about 5 people. And I was in that station all by myself, and it was like these creepy sounds, and I was like, and then turning around, But then he put me on because I was getting a lot of good feedback, and I had a real good sense of how to mix music. I had a really good ear. And this was back in the days, man, I'm telling you, we had 2 turntables, turntable here, turntable here, you had your 8-track pots here. Right. So you were like always changing records and stuff. But I had a real good feel for music, and I had a pretty good voice. So he said, I want you to take over. And Kathy, Kathy Hughes was the one who started the Quiet Storm. She started the Quiet Storm at WHUR, Howard University Radio in DC. She was the one who invented it. You know how it happened? Melvin, whatever his name is, I forgot his name. Iconic radio DJ, was playing music, and she was the program director there. He was playing music and was just rolling. He was playing this mellow stuff like 7, 8 o'clock at night, and she was listening as she had to do, and she called him up and said, Melvin, oh my God, man, you sound so good tonight. You sound like a Quiet Storm. And that's how the Quiet Storm was born.
Wow.
And so, the only thing she didn't do is she didn't trademark that title. That's why everybody has a Quiet Storm.
Right.
But they hooked me up and made me become the voice of the AM Quiet Storm. And so I was the voice of the AM Quiet Storm for about a year. Mm-hmm. My only problem was I didn't love radio.
Okay.
I liked it, and I was really good at it. But to be able to do radio over the long haul, you have to love it, because you're talking about a 4-6 hour shift where you can't have any mistakes. You can't have any airspace that's blank without something. And I was great at mixing music. I was great at talking to the crowd. But when I'm talking to the audience, I'm basically talking to a wall with a window and a microphone. I couldn't see anybody. And I was an actor, and I was used to seeing my audience. So I didn't love that. And so that's when I kind of bowed out.
So you're a Juilliard trained actor. The time on the radio, do you think in any way that the radio experience, it kind of informed your acting, or did anything enhance your acting ability in any way, or you take any of that?
Well, everything affects everything else. Everything inspires everything else. So the stuff that I learned at the radio station, I learned some valuable lessons. I learned about, I think the most valuable lesson I learned at the radio station was, if it's not right, you do it until you get it right. And I learned that in the production room when I was cutting commercials or whatever, and I was doing voiceover work for the commercials. My father came in and he said, and you heard me doing one, he said, how many takes was that? I said, I think that was number 7. And he said, you like it? I said, it's okay, it's pretty good. I think I'll go with that. And he said, no. And he told me, you do it until you get it right. And he said, I don't care if it's 100 takes, you do it until you get it right. And I never forgot that. Because I wasn't worried about the expediency, or 7 takes, that's enough. I don't want to. No, if it takes 100, if it takes 150, until you get that one that's right, you do it. And he told me about, like, when I was mixing music, how to fade in from a slow mellow down up into a medium. You never go from a medium down to a low. You can go, or high down to a low. You can go from a medium down to a low. You can go from a low all the way up to an up. But he also told me how to blend the pots. He said, you hold your pot, and the pot's the thing that turns the body. He said, and it was profound, because it was like I was like 20 years old. It blew my mind. He said, Mike, you hold your pot the way you hold your woman if you want to keep her. And I was like, oh, okay. And he turned it with such, it was delicate, and the sound and I was like, oh my God. And I've just never forgotten those 2 things.
Valuable insights.
Yeah.
And so you've also, you got a book out there. You've written a book. They must not know who I think I am. Lessons in Defiant Resilience. Yeah. So tell us about this book. I mean, this is motivational.
Yeah, it's an inspirational book. It's we live in a world where, especially in today's economy and everything, people in what I call the real world, they get panicked over the insecurity of job security, the insecurity of the economy fluctuating. And for people who are in the regular job market, if something comes to cause an upheaval in their security, they freak out. Because if you were at a job for 15 years and all of a sudden your company starts to come in and say, we're going to downsize, and you're one of the 36 jobs we're going to cut out, they don't know where to turn. They've never been faced with that, or they certainly haven't been faced with it in a long, long time, so they freak out. We as artists face it every single day, because being an artist, and certainly being an actor, means every gig you get is basically a temp job. Even if I was just on Broadway this past year. I did a year on Broadway as Dr. Dillerman in Wicked. I was contracted for 9 months. They extended me for a year, which is pretty much unheard of, which was a blessing there. But even then, I knew that it was a temp gig. It was going to end at some point. And that show's been running for 13 years for the ensemble members who can stay in it for the duration. They rotate the principal actors about every 9 months. But there's some ensemble members who've been in Wicked for that were there when I was there. They've been in there for 12 of the 13 years that the show's been running. But eventually, that's going to come to an end. So it's a temp gig. And so actors are always able to adjust mentally, because I mean, Hamlet is going to close sometime next month. Whether we get extended or not, it's going to close.
Right.
And I'm already prepared that for a time period, I'm going to be without a gig. I gotta hustle to find the next gig. Meryl Streep has got to find the next gig, okay? Right. And if that happens to them, so I wrote the book through the eyes of an artist dealing with this industry for 30 plus years, the ups and downs, for people in any walk of life and in any profession to be able to see how you can be defiant and resilient, to hold on in the throes of upheaval, in the throes of self-doubt, when fluctuations happen in your world and you don't know where to turn or where the next gig is going to come from. I tell that story in the book about one Christmas. My kids were both little at the time, and I was in that middle of this drought where I couldn't get a job to save my life for like 2 years. I couldn't get an acting gig of any kind. And it was like December, I don't know, 11th, December 15th, something like that. Christmas was right around the corner, and I didn't have the rent, and I didn't have the money to get my kids. My kids were always write their letters to Santa Claus. And, beautiful letters. And my kids wrote their letters, and they gave them to me in the mail. And I read these letters this time, and I was like, oh my God. And there was nothing extraordinary, exorbitant on these. There was everything that every child at that age should be able to wish for and be able to get at Christmas. Right. But I didn't have the cash. At that time, I think I had $24.37 in the account, and I was so broke that I wrote that number down on the calendar and I circled it in red ink, right? And so, in a fit of rage, because I read these Santa Claus letters, I was angry. I sat down on the edge of my bed and I yelled up at God. I said, "Fine, if that's the way this is going to be, then I quit." And then I stormed out of the apartment. And I don't know if you know New York, but in Times Square, there's an Armed Forces Recruitment Center there. So I ran over to the Armed Forces Recruitment Center and I walked in, went up to the captain, stuck out my chest and said, "I want to join the Marines." And the captain said, "Okay, I need to see your ID." So I pulled out my ID, slapped it on the desk. He looked at it and looked back at me and said, "Sorry, can't help you." I said, "Wait, what are you talking about? Why not?" He said, "You're too old." I said, "Too old? But come on, what are you talking about?" He said, "You missed the age requirement cutoff by 3 months."
Oh, geez.
So I tucked my tail and went back home. Didn't know what was going to happen. When I walked through the door, the phone rang, and there was a producer from a radio show called me, and she said, I heard you do a gig a few years ago. We have a gig. We need a Santa Claus to come on air who's irreverent, urban, that can play Santa Claus for us. Would you be willing to do that? If you just say yes, I will overnight you the money tomorrow." Wow. It was a lot of money. And I looked in the mirror and I said, "Yeah." And so we always find a way. Something always happens, and you always find a way to be resilient enough to hold on, or we usually do anyway. So I wrote "They Must Not Know Who I Think I Am," Lessons in Defiant Resilience, for people to be able to figure out how to hold on in the midst of all this turmoil we have going on around us. And to understand that everything is a temp gig. Right. And when that time comes up, it just means it's time for you to do something else. Or it's time for you to hold on a little tighter until that next rung of what you were doing comes along. And it will come along if you stay defiant and true to your convictions,
Okay. And you've been in this game for 30 plus years. Voiceover, acting, TV, film, stage. So what useful nuggets one thing that advice you would give to younger actors, maybe just starting out, or even actors that are midstream in their career?
Well, actors, oh God. Well, to be honest with you, this is what I would say to people who want to be. I have two different things for actors and writers. People come to me, or mothers and fathers especially, mostly mothers. They come to me and say, I got a son or I got a daughter who wants to be an actor, and what do you think I should do? And I tell them, and then the kid is standing right there, especially if the kid is right there. I will look at them and I'll tell them, I say, honestly, if there's anything you can do other than being an actor that you could be happy with and be moderately successful at, you should do that. Because this game is way too hard. And you're gonna have to sacrifice so much. I mean, being in show business costs. I mean, everything costs in this world. A loaf of bread costs you a certain amount of money. A new car is gonna cost you this. Pursuing your dreams costs. It costs. trying to be in show business is going to cost you tremendously. You're going to go periods where you don't have a dime to your name. How are you going to pay the rent? How are you going to feed your family? Whatever. If there's anything else, if you can be a lawyer, if you can be a teacher, if you can be, an IT person, and you can be happy doing that, you should be doing that. Now, if I say that to them, and that young person is not fazed by that advice, then they're supposed to be in this game.
I see.
You see, the ones who are not fazed are the ones who are supposed to be in this game. If you're fazed by anything I say about that, then you're not supposed to be in this game. Because if you really want it, the bottom line is you have to ask yourself, how bad do I want it? That's the ultimate question. Because if you don't want this bad enough, don't even attempt it, because it's going to make you answer that question time and time and time and again. You can be in this game 15 years, 20 years, and eventually it's going to ask you that question 5, 6, 7, 10 times over, because you're going to always come to that wall. It's going to make you slim. My great friend Felicia Rashad, we were talking a few years ago, and she was telling me about, the great Felicia Rashad went through a period where she couldn't get arrested for a couple years.
Really?
And you wouldn't think Felicia Rashad,
right,
she couldn't get a gig.
Wow.
It happens to all of us. And you got to ask yourself, are you, how bad do you want to stay in this? Now for writers, and writers come up to me all the time. And people say, I got this thing, I think I want to try to say, I've never written before, but I want to try it. The best piece of advice I give to a writer is, whatever you start, finish it.
Okay.
Because writing will humble you. A producer of mine, when I was working on this film, and one day she called me and asked me how it's going on, and I said, Joanne, it's kicking my butt. It's just, she said, Michael, and she said it in the calmest voice, she said, Michael, it's supposed to kick your butt.
Right.
If everybody could do this, everyone would. So if you finish what you start as a writing project, and don't worry about whether it's any good or bad, because once you finish it, you can go back and check it out and edit it and all that, and make whatever doesn't work. But if you finish it, you have set yourself up to be able to finish whatever you start for the rest of your life. If you walk away from it because you say, oh man, this is too bad, and you quit on it, you've opened the door to you quitting something for the rest of your life.
Very true. Yeah.
So, and I tell people, if you finish something that you started as a writing project, and then you print it out and you set those pages on the table, on a desk or whatever in front of you, just sit down and just look at that, stacks it. It is a feeling like no other. It's like, what an achievement. And it could be the biggest piece of garbage, or it could be the second coming of Roots or Gone with the Wind or whatever. But just seeing that stack that you beginning, middle, and end sitting in front of you, man, it's like you can conquer the world.
Right. A sense of accomplishment. Yeah. So what does Michael Genet have coming up?
I've got a TV project that is going out there and going to be testing the market, and we hope that it will find a studio that picks it up, because I really want to crash that TV ceiling. I've got a film that we were actually supposed to have shot last year that last minute changes had to be made in some of the personnel. So
the Cape Island Affair, is that that
well,
piece?
The Cape Island Affair was the original title. That was a script that I did based on a short story by the wonderful writer, British writer Joanne Harris, who gave us the wonderful novel that they turned into a movie called Chocolat with Johnny Depp and Isabella Rossellini. This is another magical food recipe tale that's quite wonderful, but it has been augmented now and changed into a different script / story, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, that's Hollywood, that's the way it goes, but it's still really wonderful. We're waiting now on our director because he's on some other project, and so, Hollywood is a hurry up and wait game, unfortunately. Yeah, so those are the two most immediate things. I've got two other new film projects, scripts that I'm supposed to start on, but I really want to see the TV piece through to fruition first before I jump on those.
Always working.
You gotta be.
Yeah.
You gotta be, or else, because if you're not, somebody else is.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's beautiful. So make sure you catch him, Michael Genet, while he's here in San Diego performing in Hamlet up until September 13th, possibly the 22nd.
Longer. We'll see.
We'll see. and come and catch this brother. It's an amazing performance.
Hamlet is fantastic. Come.
It's fantastic. So thank you so much, brother.
It's a pleasure.
I appreciate you,
Yeah.
and thank you for representing Black excellence.
I try, brother.
I really appreciate you. And thank you, viewers, for joining us for another episode, and we'll see you next time.
And I'm sorry I was dressed like this, y'all, but last minute.
He's in San Diego. He's in San Diego, so it's just fine. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for tuning in.